I was just 13 years old when my entire world changed. That morning felt like any other. My dad, Mark Anderson, kissed my forehead like he always did before heading to work. He was an engineer at a local construction firm in Boulder, Colorado. Hardworking, kind, and my biggest supporter. He always made time for me, even when he was exhausted, whether it was helping me with school projects or showing up to every school play, he never missed a moment. That morning, I watched him drive off through the kitchen window, sipping my orange juice. I didn't know it would be the last time I ever saw him. Mom didn't even look up from her phone when he said goodbye. She used to light up when Dad walked in the room, but lately, things had changed. She was colder, distracted. I remember thinking it was strange, but I didn't ask. Later that afternoon, I was pulled out of my 7th grade science class. The principal's voice over the intercom was quiet, almost too careful. "Chloe Anderson, please come to the office." When I walked in, Mom was already there. Her hair and makeup were flawless, not a smudge in sight. She looked untouched, like she had just come from a salon. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink much. "Your father collapsed at work," she said. "Massive heart attack, he didn't make it." Her voice was calm. Too calm. I burst into tears right there in the principal's office. But Mom just sat next to me, lightly patting my back like she was comforting a stranger. Her hand barely touched me. That night, I was in my room, lying on my bed with the door cracked open, when I heard her voice. She was on the phone with her best friend Lisa. She wasn't whispering either. The walls in our house were thin. "Well, Lisa," she said, chuckling softly, "this might actually be for the best. I mean, come on. Being a widow sounds a hell of a lot more respectable than getting a divorce. And now I get to keep everything without dealing with court or lawyers?" I froze. My hands started shaking. Then she added, "Don't worry. I'll cry at the funeral. I already found the perfect black dress. Very chic, very tragic." And then she laughed, like it was all just a joke. I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying not to scream. I wanted to believe I had misheard her, that she was in shock, that this wasn't who my mother really was. But deep down, I knew the truth. My mother didn't love my dad. And now that he was gone, she didn't even try to pretend. 4 months. That's how long it took for my mother to move on. 4 months after my father's funeral, she invited a man over for dinner. His name was Thomas Mitchell. He sold real estate and wore too much cologne. He smiled like he was trying too hard, and his eyes scanned the house like he already owned it. Sitting across from him at the dinner table, I watched my mother transform into someone I barely recognized. Giggling, flipping her hair, serving roasted chicken with rosemary. She had never cooked like this for Dad. Never. Thomas had 2 kids of his own, Olivia, who was 15, and Mason, 13. They came with him the second time he visited. Olivia had perfect posture and a phone glued to her hand. Mason wore designer sneakers and didn't say much, except for a few snide comments under his breath. I felt like I didn't belong in my own home anymore. Then one evening after dessert, Mom looked at me across the table and said in her sickly sweet voice, "Chloe, honey, Thomas and I have some exciting news." I already knew what was coming. I'd seen them holding hands, whispering, acting like teenagers at a school dance. "We're getting married," she beamed. "Isn't that wonderful? You'll have a new father and 2 new siblings." I forced a smile. "That's great. Congrats." Thomas smiled too, but it didn't feel genuine. "Olivia and Mason are really looking forward to having a sister," he added. Funny, because every time they looked at me, it felt like they were imagining ways to replace me. That night, I called Aunt Rachel and cried until my voice was hoarse. She didn't interrupt once, just listened. And when I was quiet, she said the one thing that stuck with me more than anything else. "Sweetheart, sometimes the family you choose means more than the one you were born into." I didn't fully understand what she meant back then, but I would soon enough. A week after the wedding, Olivia and Mason moved in. Immediately, everything changed. They took the biggest bedrooms in the house. My old playroom? That became Olivia's art studio. Mason got the room with the best view, one I used to sit in and watch sunsets with Dad. When I quietly mentioned how I felt, my mom snapped, "Don't be selfish, Chloe. We need to make them feel welcome." I bit my tongue. Because what I wanted to say was, what about making me feel welcome in my own home? But that would have been pointless. I was no longer the daughter. I was the outsider. The extra. The reminder of a man my mother had long since erased. After Tomas and his kids moved in, everything about my home began to feel unfamiliar. Like someone had rearranged the furniture of my life without asking. My mom became someone else. She suddenly cared about dinner menus, ironed cloth napkins, and making sure Olivia had enough colored pencils for her sketchbook. She spent hours helping Mason practice for his debate team. She was engaged, energetic, loving, but not toward me. While Olivia got help with her essays, I struggled through algebra worksheets alone at the dining table. While Mason had his soccer practices cheered on, I ate reheated leftovers in my room. One night, I came downstairs just as they were leaving for a weekend trip to Aspen. I hadn't even heard about it. "Oh, Chloe," my mom said, grabbing a bag of snacks. "You wouldn't enjoy it. It's mostly skiing and bonding time. Besides, someone needs to feed the cat." Then she walked out the door, laughing with Thomas like nothing was missing. I ended up staying with Aunt Rachel that weekend, again. Her little cottage outside town had peeling paint and creaky floors, but to me, it felt like home. She made pancakes from scratch and let me pick the movie every night. "This isn't right," she said one evening as I unpacked my overnight bag, again. "A mother shouldn't have favorites." I shrugged, pretending it didn't sting. "At least I have you." And I meant that more than I ever had before. The divide in our home became more and more obvious with time. If Olivia wanted new clothes for school, Mom took her to the mall and bought 2 of everything. Mason wanted a new phone? Duh. I once asked for a replacement for my broken laptop charger, just a charger, and my mom rolled her eyes and said, "Chloe, you really need to learn not to expect everything handed to you." It was around then that I stopped asking. They took trips without me, celebrated birthdays without me, took family photos without me. And worse of all, they didn't even try to hide it. One day, I came across a picture Olivia had posted online, a family selfie in the kitchen. Caption, "Family breakfast tradition." I was in the background, blurry, walking past the table with my backpack. Not even cropped in, just forgotten. That's when it hit me. I didn't live in a home anymore. I lived in a house. And I was no longer part of the family inside it. When I turned 17, I started thinking about college. It felt like the only way out, like the only door left that might lead to a different life. I spent hours in the public library after school, reading about business programs, scholarships, and campus housing. I wanted to major in event management. I had this dream of creating beautiful things for other people. Weddings, fundraisers, even corporate events. I imagined a world where I mattered. One evening, over dinner, I finally brought it up. We were eating spaghetti that Tomas had overcooked. Olivia was on her phone. Mason was talking about some new gaming headset. Mom looked relaxed, maybe even happy. I thought it was my moment. "I've been researching colleges," I said. "I'm really interested in studying event management. I found some schools with good programs and scholarships." My fork barely touched the plate before she cut me off. "College?" She laughed like I'd said something ridiculous. "Chloe, we can't afford to send you to college." She didn't hesitate, no pause. "We have to think about Olivia and Mason. Olivia has been working so hard and Mason needs tutoring just to stay on track." I looked at Thomas. He didn't say a word, just kept chewing. I looked at Olivia, who smirked. Mason snorted. I swallowed hard. "What about Dad's life insurance?" I asked. "Didn't he save money for college?" That was the wrong question. My mom's face turned ice cold. "Do you think raising you was free?" she snapped. "Do you have any idea what groceries cost, clothes, your bedroom, your phone plan?" "I've used that money to keep you afloat, Chloe. Stop acting like you're owed something." I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Her words felt like a slap. It wasn't just the money. It was the way she said it. Like everything Dad had left behind for me had been spent on keeping me quiet, keeping me out of the way. That weekend, I packed a small bag and took the bus to Aunt Rachel's. When I got there, I couldn't even fake a smile. We sat in her kitchen, the smell of her fresh coffee wrapping around me like a hug. I told her everything, the college dream, the rejection, the money, the words. She didn't say anything right away, just held her warm mug between her palms, thinking. Then she stood up and quietly left the room. I thought maybe she didn't know what to say, but then I heard her in the other room, opening drawers, shuffling papers. She came back with a thick envelope in her hand. "Your dad came to see me about 3 weeks before he passed," she said gently, setting the envelope on the table in front of me. "He was worried. He didn't trust your mother with the money. He asked me to hold this for you. Until you were ready." I stared at the envelope. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside was a bank statement with a savings account, under my name. My name. Aunt Rachel was listed as the trustee. There was more money in there than I had ever dreamed of. Not millions, but enough for college, enough for a fresh start. My father, who was already sick and tired and stretched thin, had still thought ahead. He had protected me even when he knew he might not be around. Tears fell down my cheeks before I even noticed. He didn't forget me. He didn't leave me empty. He believed in me, when no one else in that house ever did. After that night at Aunt Rachel's, everything changed, but only on the inside. I didn't say anything to my mom. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask about the money again. I just stopped expecting anything from her. Instead, I focused on what I could control. I worked harder at school than ever before. I took advanced placement classes. I stayed up late applying for scholarships I didn't even need, just in case. I worked part-time at a cafe after school and saved every single dollar. I didn't post anything about my plans. Didn't leave a single paper lying around the house. I kept everything hidden, like a secret I wasn't ready to share. Because I knew, deep down, I wasn't part of that family. I was just a guest with no expiration date. Olivia and Mason never let me forget it either. "Hey, Chloe," Mason said one day in the hallway at school, grinning. "I heard the diner downtown is hiring. Maybe you can start washing dishes after graduation." Olivia, standing next to him, let out a fake laugh. "Actually, maybe they'll let her wipe down tables, too. Big career move." They thought they were clever, but I just kept walking. Didn't react, didn't give them the satisfaction. And somehow, that seemed to bother them even more. I kept going, quietly, steadily, like a tide they couldn't stop. Then came graduation day. I hadn't even taken off my cap and gown when my mom called me into the living room. She and Thomas were sitting on the couch like judges waiting to deliver a sentence. "You're 19 now, Chloe," Thomas said. "We've done our part. It's time for you to start taking care of yourself." My mom crossed her arms. "You'll need to move out by the end of next week. We need the space." I didn't flinch. I smiled. "Okay," I said simply. "That works. I'll be gone by Friday." They were stunned, like they were expecting a meltdown. But I wasn't that girl anymore. No one asked where I'd go. No one offered help. They didn't care. They just wanted me out. And honestly, I was ready. That week, I packed everything I owned into 3 boxes and 2 suitcases. It wasn't much, but it was mine. At exactly 10 a.m. Friday morning, Aunt Rachel pulled up in her dusty blue Subaru. I looked out the window, half hoping someone from the house would come say goodbye. But no one did, even though I saw the curtain in Olivia's room shift. No goodbyes, no thank yous, not even a glance. As we drove away, the house in the rearview mirror got smaller and smaller. But I didn't cry. In fact, with every mile we put between us, I felt lighter. That house had been a cage dressed up as a home. And I was finally free. That summer was the first time I ever felt like my life belonged to me. I moved into Aunt Rachel's guest room. It was small, the walls were a faded peach color, and the bed creaked when I turned over at night. But it was safe. It was mine. I started working full-time at a small cafe downtown, Sunrise Brew. It wasn't glamorous, but the customers were kind, the manager gave me extra shifts, and the tips helped me stretch every dollar. Every time I dropped a $10 bill into my college jar, I felt like I was building something that no one could take away from me. In September, I boarded a bus headed 2 states away. My destination? University of West Virginia, where I had been accepted into the event management program. I remember the moment I stepped onto campus. The air smelled like wet leaves and new beginnings. Students moved across the quad with confidence like they belonged there. I wasn't sure I did yet, but I knew I would. I shared a dorm with a girl named Jenna Collins. She was outgoing, loud, and loved pineapple pizza. At first, we didn't talk much. I kept to myself, focused on classes and working weekends at a bookstore near campus. But over time, Jenna noticed I never had visitors, never got care packages, never called home. One night, after finals, we sat on the floor eating instant noodles, and she finally asked, "Hey, Chloe, where's your family?" I hesitated. Then I told her everything. I told her about my dad and the way he used to show up to every school event, no matter how small. I told her about my mom, the remarriage, the favoritism, the silence. I told her about the bank account, about Aunt Rachel, about leaving with 3 boxes and no goodbyes. When I finished, she just sat there for a minute. Then she said, "Well, they lost something pretty amazing." And she hugged me. That's when I realized, sometimes it only takes one person to remind you you're not invisible. The next few years weren't easy. I worked every break, took extra credits every semester. I skipped parties and focused on building my future. But I never felt sorry for myself. Because every late night studying, every tired shift, every small win, it was mine. I earned it. Aunt Rachel would call every Sunday like clockwork. She'd ask how classes were going, what I was eating, if I needed socks. I'd smile and tell her, "I'm okay, Auntie, I'm really okay." And I meant it. I was finally becoming the version of myself my father had believed in. After I graduated, life didn't slow down. It sped up, and so did I. I landed a junior role at a mid-size event management firm in Charlotte. I worked weekends, I stayed late, I asked for projects no one else wanted. And slowly, people started to notice. I got promoted. Then promoted again. Within 6 years, I became the senior director of strategic events at the same company. I bought my own apartment, a 1-bedroom in the city with big windows and real hardwood floors. I treated myself to a car I had always dreamed about, a black Mercedes AMG, sleek and silent. I didn't post about it. I didn't need to. Aunt Rachel was the only one who knew every detail, every step, every win. "You earned every bit of it," she'd say, eyes full of pride. "Your dad would be so proud." Meanwhile, I sometimes checked in on Olivia and Mason. Not directly, just their public social media accounts. Olivia still posted mirror selfies with borrowed designer bags and fake hashtags like blessed and luxury life. Mason once posted a photo standing next to his aging Honda Civic with the caption, "Work hard, play hard." I used to roll my eyes, now I just smiled. They didn't need to know what I had. They didn't deserve to. Then one Thursday morning, everything shifted. I woke up to a message request on Instagram. "Chloe, it's your mother. I'm hosting my 60th birthday at a very exclusive place called Le Blanc. You probably haven't heard of it. I expect you to attend. It's on the 16th at 8 p.m. Don't embarrass me. No, how are you? No, I miss you. Just an order, and a dig about the restaurant." I stared at the message for a long time. I almost deleted it. But something stopped me. Not anger, not revenge. Just curiosity, maybe a little closure. That night, while sipping tea in Aunt Rachel's cozy kitchen, I showed her the message. She raised an eyebrow. "What are you planning to give her?" I smiled and took out my phone. Aunt Rachel squinted at the screen. "Is that a luxury vacation package?" "To Italy," I nodded. 3 weeks, 5-star resorts, first-class flights, the whole deal. It cost me just over $24,000. She nearly spilled her tea. "Chloe, that's insane. She doesn't deserve that." "Oh, I know," I said, sipping slowly. "But I want to see her face when she realizes the daughter she cast aside became everything she thought she deserved." Aunt Rachel shook her head, laughing. "You're a little bit wicked." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm done hiding. I want her to see what she missed." The night of my mother's birthday, I wore a simple but elegant black Chanel dress. It wasn't flashy. It didn't scream for attention. But it cost more than anything anyone else would wear that night. I took a taxi to the restaurant on purpose. I could have driven my Mercedes, but I didn't want them to see it. Not yet. Le Blanche was exactly what I expected, faux fancy. They served frozen scallops with gold flakes and called it fine dining. A hostess walked me to the private room. I took a deep breath before stepping in. The party was in full swing. My mother sat at the head of the table, in a glittery dress, surrounded by her people. Thomas beside her, Olivia and Mason on either side, holding court like they owned the room. The moment she saw me, her face tightened into a forced smile. "Oh, Chloe, you came," she said. "You could have dressed up more, it's a special occasion." I said nothing, just smiled politely and took a seat at the far end of the table. Gift after gift was opened. A candle set from Aunt Laura. A spa voucher from Cousin Lila. Even Olivia and Mason got their moment, presenting her with a 70-inch flat-screen TV. My mother gasped, threw her arms around them, called them her wonderful children. Finally, all eyes turned to me. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small, neatly wrapped box. I placed it gently on the table in front of her. Her smile vanished. "What's this supposed to be?" she asked. "A keychain?" "Just open it," I said quietly. She didn't. Instead, she rolled her eyes and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Typical. Chloe shows up in a taxi, wears the only nice dress she probably owns, and brings me this tiny box." She pushed it away. It slid across the table. Olivia and Mason smirked. Some guests chuckled uncomfortably. Thomas kept eating like nothing was happening. I calmly picked up the box, brushed off a crumb, and held it in my hand. Then I stood. "You know what's funny?" I said, my voice clear. "That tiny box contains a receipt for a luxury vacation to Italy. First-class flights, 5-star resorts, 3 full weeks. It cost $24,000. The room went silent. My mother froze. Her jaw dropped. "You're lying," Olivia muttered. My mother found her voice. "You can't afford that." I laughed softly. "No, I guess you wouldn't know what I can afford. You haven't asked about my life in over 10 years. I looked around the table. I'm a senior director at one of the top event firms in the country. I own my home. I drive a car worth more than everything in your driveway combined." Gasps. I turned to my mother. "But don't worry. You won't have to wonder anymore. I'm not here to impress you. I just wanted you to know." "What, you threw away?" Then I looked down at the box. "And since you clearly don't want anything from me." I turned and walked out, box still in hand. Nobody stopped me. The click of my heels echoed louder than anything anyone had to say. The hostess called me a taxi. I left without a single glance back. When I got to Aunt Rachel, she was waiting on the porch with 2 mugs of tea. I told her everything. She listened, smiled, and said, "She showed you exactly who she is, and you showed her exactly who you've become." That night, I changed the name on the Italy vacation package. It now read, Rachel Green. She tried to protest, of course. I didn't let her. "You've been more of a mother to me than she ever was," I said. "You believed in me before I believed in myself." She cried when I said that. I hugged her tighter than I ever had. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace? No need to prove anything. No need to fight for love that was never real. I had built a life on my own terms. With people who actually showed up. And that was more than enough.